Mike, we gotta make a video.
Yeah, I think I got it. Come on in.
Okay, so what do you think all of these things have in common?
Grapes, chocolate, rock candy, ice cream? Are you planning on eating all this stuff and giving yourself a sugar high?
Not quite. Let's talk about the phases of matter.
What exactly is a phase of matter? In school you may have learned about the three phases of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. But what if I told you that there are more than just these three phases? Most of the things that we interact with on a day-to-day basis fit into these categories, but not everything fits so neatly into them. Take the sun for instance. It's this huge ball of stuff hanging out in the sky, smashing hydrogen atoms into each other. But what's it made out of? In a previous video we said that everything in the universe was made of atoms. That's not exactly true. When you heat things up to super hot temperatures, we're talking about tens of thousands of degrees Celsius, you start to see a breakdown in the atomic structure. The electrons that were tied to the nucleus at room temperature are ripped off because of the huge amount of thermal energy. The plasma that you end up with is basically a gas made up of freely moving nuclei and electrons. With a surface temperature of around 5,500 degrees Celsius, the sun is definitely hot enough to generate this plasma. But plasma exists on Earth too. We see it every time there's a thunderstorm when lightning strikes, or even sometimes when we flip a light switch. When they're off, fluorescent light bulbs are filled with mercury gas. When high voltages run across the vapor, the gas is excited, plasma is generated, and the bulb produces light. Believe it or not, you don't even need super high voltage to create plasma. You just need a grape and a microwave. If you cut a grape in half and leave a little bit of skin linking the two halves together, you can actually create plasma in the microwave.
Slash. Oh, this is a great one.
Oh, whoa! Now let's talk a little bit more about the solid state. You might have heard it defined as a state of matter where atoms and molecules are packed closely together, allowing for dense, rigid materials. But the exact way that these atoms and molecules pack together can be completely different, which will completely change the properties of the solid. Take chocolate for example. Have you ever left a bar of chocolate out in the sun for too long, then come back to find a melty mess? If you tried fixing it by putting it in the fridge, you might have noticed that it doesn't behave the same way. Now it's softer and it doesn't have the same snap when you bite into it. Even though the chocolate is still made of the same stuff, the molecules were jumbled around in the heating and cooling process. A materials scientist would say that it changed crystal phases. A baker would say that it went from tempered to untempered chocolate. Now that we've established that multiple phases of matter exist, let's talk about how these things can move between them. In phase transitions, a substance will go from one phase to another. This is exactly what happens when people make ice cream. Now you can try this a little bit at home. For our recipe, we used 1 cup of half and half, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1/4 cup of salt, some ice, and a bunch of plastic bags. We mixed the sugar, half and half of vanilla in one Ziploc bag and put the ice and salt in the other. Then we put our liquid mixture inside the bag with the salt and ice and mushed it around for a very long time. Let's try it out.
This is interesting, guys. Not bad at all.
Not bad, yeah.
Really good, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whoa.
Adding the salt is important. It causes the ice to melt, which actually wicks away heat from the surroundings, which makes the brine mixture and ice cream batter super cold. Now, even though ice cream is frozen, it's a bit different from an ice cube. It's a lot softer and a lot smoother because it's made up of a bunch of tiny ice crystals as opposed to one massive crystal in an ice cube. Now, there are other ways of making solids from liquids beyond freezing too. If you dissolve a bunch of sugar into a glass of hot water and let it cool down, the sugar will spontaneously crash out of solution and recrystallize. If we put a string into the solution as this happens, we can create rock candy that clings to the string.
Oh, baby. This is awesome. We hope you guys have had fun doing experiments these past few weeks.
We'll see you again to talk more about phase transitions on Zoom on Wednesday.
See ya.
See ya.